In World War II, as pilots were shot down and forced to bail out or crash land, getting back to friendly lines was rarely an easy task. If they were lucky enough to avoid immediate capture by the enemy, downed airmen often faced treks of hundreds or even thousands of miles across dangerous terrain to make it back home. In this video, however, we will look at one of the most unbelievable stories of World War II, where an American pilot would actually see his wingman go down before taking matters into his own hands and saving the fellow airmen in the most heroic way imaginable. When I am working on these history videos for you guys, one of the most beneficial things that I have learned to do is to maximize my focus. And one of the single best tools that I have found for doing that is this video's sponsor, Indel Soundscapes. Indel is an app that takes everything we know about sound and combines it with cutting-edge technology to bring you real-time personalized soundscapes that help you relax, focus, or sleep. Whatever need you might have, their patented technology uses AI to adapt to things like location, weather, and heart rate to get the best soundscapes for you. Because of this, studies have shown that Indel provides the fastest and most consistent focus versus playlists on streaming platforms. One thing that I particularly enjoy is that after I use Indel to help improve productivity throughout the day, I can use a soundscape like James Blake Wind Down to help put me in a good state of mind for rest and relaxation. So, if you want to improve your focus like I have, use the link in the description where the first 100 people to download Indel will get a free week of audio experiences. Check it out now and support TJ3 History. Thanks again to Indel, and without further ado, enjoy. The P-38 Lightning is one of the most recognizable aircraft in history. While being extremely unique in design, it was also incredibly effective. This fighter saw action continuously in the war, from the time the U.S. entered the conflict until the very end. In August of 1944, the P-38 was the primary fighter of the 82nd Fighter Group, which was based in Italy. This group was tasked with providing air support and assisting in pushing the Germans back north. On the 4th of the month, they were assigned a mission that would see them flying a long route northeast into Allied Russian territory. During this, they were supposed to hit German airfields and other targets of value like trains and supply convoys. The P-38 and their pilots, after being fully briefed, took off and headed out for their sortie. After a few hours and hundreds of miles of flying, they were well into enemy territory and were now in an area that they could expect to attack German units. One of the P-38s in this mission was flown by an airman named Dick Wilsey. He was the flight leader of the 96th Squadron. This was his 59th mission and would also turn out to be his most memorable. Wilsey and his flight opened up the combat phase of this mission when they came across some German trains and trucks on the ground below near Ploesti. He turned and began to strafe these units on the ground along with the rest of his P-38s. Shortly into this engagement, however, he took a hit from anti-aircraft fire, which severely damaged his left engine. He opted to continue on, believing that he could still make it out safely with just one good engine. He kept on with his flight, strafing additional German targets in his damaged aircraft. Unfortunately, his aircraft yet again took another hit from German anti-aircraft fire, dealing a critical blow to his remaining good engine. Realizing the situation and seeing coolant fluid leaking out heavily now, Wilsey then knew that he had just a few minutes of airtime left at best. So he radioed to his wingman, telling him that he was going to bring down his Lightning in for a forced landing. When this went out on the radio, however, an unexpected reply echoed back from 20-year-old flight officer Dick Andrews, who said, "Pick a good field and I will come in after you." Willsey, however, was locked in with full focus on his emergency landing and hardly heard the response, and as his throttle quickly faded, he began his approach to bring his P-38 down. On his way, he took another hit in the cockpit from gunfire and actually felt blood trickling down his forehead. But despite this, he kept his line and was able to land his bird successfully. After coming to his senses from a hard landing, he got out of his fighter and saw that the combat continued overhead. He was about to make a run for a nearby tree line when he saw something unbelievable. Flight Officer Andrews' P-38 headed in his direction with the landing gear down. He could hardly believe what he saw in this moment, and after some finessing to make sure his approach was solid, Andrews went in to try and land in the very same field. It is worth noting that this landing had to be perfect, as he would only have one shot. Any damage in the landing and they would not be able to get in the air again. But Andrews remained cool, and once he had his approach set up, he came down for a soft landing in his P-38 a few hundred yards away from Willsey. Leaving the engines running, he waited for his downed ally to make the sprint to his own plane. All the while, German ground forces were approaching from multiple directions and even shooting periodically at the pair, wanting desperately to capture the Americans. Fortunately, some of their remaining squadron members made sure to strafe the ground German forces, allowing time for the pair to get situated. Once Willsey was able to make it to Andrews' plane, they had to figure out how to get both of them into a cockpit that was only designed for one. The following is a direct quote from Willsey on what happened next. "When I got to Dick's P-38, he was standing on the wing. He had dropped the fold-down ladder and thrown his chute away to make room. Although out of breath, I managed a big smile. He grabbed my hand and pulled me up on the wing. He said, 'You fly,' and we both jumped into the cockpit with a miracle of precision. His right leg had to be placed over my right shoulder because the control column on the P-38 comes up from the right side of the cockpit. His left leg was down under my left arm, and his hind end was on the front part of the bucket seat. We pulled the canopy closed, and he put up the right window and I put up the left. This all occurred within seconds. I then pushed the propeller control to low pitch and pulled back on the controls to keep the nose up and ease the throttles forward. There were trees ahead of us, so I put down the flaps to combat position, which helped us lift off. Now I had to play the climb just enough to clear the trees, not too much or we would be right into them. But we did clear those trees, and I was sure glad they weren't 10 feet taller. As the pair then got into the air, they left the combat zone and continued to their destination. For 2.5 hours, both of them flew in a very cramped and uncomfortable cockpit until they finally arrived at the Russian airbase that they were supposed to land at. The grounds crew members likely had their jaws drop as they watched two men exit from a single P-38 cockpit. Willsey's wounds were tended to, and both of them were safe and sound. Following this, the pair of American pilots were treated like celebrities among their fellow men. Andrews was quickly promoted and awarded the Silver Star. A few days later, he also received a special commendation from General Ira Eaker, commanding officer of the U.S. Strategic Air Forces in Europe. The two men subsequently went on to complete their combat tours with the 82nd Fighter Group in World War II. Both of them went on to have distinguished post-war careers with the United States Air Force. Andrews would go on to pass away in November of 2007, and Willsey a few years later in February of 2013. If you enjoyed this video, then take a look at this list right here. These are my Patreon supporters, and they help make this video possible. If you would like your name here at the end of all of my videos and access to awesome bonus content, then please use the link in the description and check out my Patreon to support my hard work. Thanks for watching, please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.